Hi, I'm acting teacher Michael Bean, and this is your lesson for myfreeactingclass.com for today, Monday, January the 24th. Right now, these lessons are happening every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you care to join us live and in person, here is where you can find the link. You just go to myfreeactingclass.com. There we are. And you can find the link right down here. Click here for today's lesson. You can also find the link to our email if you want to send us a self-tape. We're going to be reviewing one of those today in class. And I love to receive self-tapes from students so that we can go over the technical details and also just so that we can kind of put this in practical terms. I think that one of the wonderful things about acting having moved online and to self-tapes is that it has become a little bit more democratic. And right now it is more possible than it ever has been before to be a professional actor no matter where you live, as long as you're willing to travel to whatever sort of larger market that the project is actually shooting in. The callbacks are happening on Zoom and by self-tape now as well. So it is entirely possible to live much further out from one of the big urban centers that historically you've had to stay really close to Vancouver or Los Angeles or New York or Atlanta in order to get film and TV work. And now with auditions going online, you can live outside as long as you're willing to travel in once they're paying you and you get to book some work. So that's not a bad situation. Today, I'm going to be talking about film and TV commercials. And I have a script for a film and TV commercial, something that I helped a young actor with. And I blocked out any of the information that might get him or me in trouble. But I want to show you the real thing and go through the breakdown and then talk about sort of how to prepare that script, because it's been a while since I talked about SOC, or silent on camera. Auditions and commercials are a very strange beast. They're also a really interesting test for this thing that I've been talking about in the last few lessons. The way that I'm currently thinking about breaking down scripts is through this lens of story, style, relationships, change, want. And so can you bring that to a script that has one line or no lines in a way that makes it alive and interesting for you? And that's usually the challenge with commercials, is that if you're doing a commercial audition, chances are you have one line or no lines or like 3 words, or you have to pretend that something ridiculous is happening. There are so many ridiculous commercials, especially for young folks, but really for anybody, because commercials in large part are about grabbing people's attention very, very quickly, right? They're probably going to see your character for between 2 and 5 seconds. And so, there tends to be memorable, like big reactions. Every once in a while, of course, you'll get a commercial where somebody's looking right at the camera and saying, hey, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to give you information. I'm acting like I would be on a TV show. But most of the time, you're going to get somebody going, ooh, hey, and having these big reactions. And the audience will have to sort of go get the story instantly from your face, from the way you're dressed, from your reaction. And a lot of the time they're commercials. They're about selling stuff. And especially if you are a young person, it's usually about selling stuff to little kids, right? So if you are a teenager, they're going to hire you so that kids who aspire to be teenagers look at you and are like, wow, Christina thinks that's cool. Ooh, I want to be like that cool teenager. And so what that means is that commercials, a lot of time you read them and you're like, wow, these are dumb. I think that's something that's worth getting used to, worth getting used to as you're going through film and TV auditions is, can you navigate that immediate reaction of, whoa, this is dumb, which usually just really means this is not for me, right? And so to make that shift in your head when you see a project and you're like, no, it's like, oh, great, I'm not the audience for this. Right? Am I still willing to bring the art and craft of being a skilled actor to it? Sure, that sounds like fun. Right? Like, do I have to watch every kind of TV show that I'm going to act in? No, God, no. If you only like sci-fi, like, are you going to turn down every audition for a Hallmark movie or an HBO series? Not if you want to work as an actor. And besides, why would you say no to being on set? And again, this is most of you know that I got my start working with young folks, and I've started a school in Vancouver, BC called Biz Studio. If you know young folks who are looking for classes, it's bizstudio.ca. Just plugging myself there. And so I've had this conversation with lots of folks, some of whom went on to work really regularly on these TV shows, where they're like, this show is dumb. And I'm like, yeah, but can you think about any better actor training than being on set 6 months out of the year for 4 years in a row? Being a regular on one of these TV shows, sure, like the audience is not you, but you are going to get invaluable training just being on set, so doing the real thing, regardless of whether the content of what you're saying is the kind of thing that you're going to want preserved for posterity. Sure, great. If the audience is 7-year-olds, then the script's not going to win a Pulitzer Prize. So what? Like, you, the actor, are going to get lots of good experience doing that. And that holds true for actors at any age. I hear actors, particularly sort of bad-mouthing Hallmark Lifetime movies of the week, going like, oh my God. And again, it's just, that stuff is not for you, right? If your grandma wants to watch that kind of stuff, great. And that's one way to think about Hallmark, is that, like, it's either for folks with a particular value set, or an easy way to think of it is, oh, great, okay, if the big silly comedy where everything's weird is for little kids, then the stuff where it's like, everything's like full of sentiment and feeling, but you all know it's going to work out in the end because people are just essentially good. And the big city woman is going to decide that she just really wants to stay in the small town and get married because that's the way to be happy. And why did she ever think it was going to be different? Okay, great. That's stuff for your grandma. You don't have to watch those, but what a fun challenge to live inside that character. So there's my pitch for why the immediate judgment on a script says less about the project itself and more about your own preferences and why it's valuable to get creative outside of that. Let's look at this commercial audition, because it's simple on the surface and I think relatively straightforward to do, but there's still some complexity to be found there. So here's the actual script. Teen bully, male. Cut to: a man wanders the aisles of a video store on a bustling Friday night. He thinks to himself, VO, what if I could watch any movie I wanted? He reaches for a new release, but a mean-looking teen grabs it right before he can. VO, without leaving my couch. The teen's brother kicks his briefcase. So this was the audition sides for both for the man, I think, and for the teen bully. So if we look down here, this is a breakdown, and I haven't had a chance to show you very many of these in the lesson, partly because I've been nervous about showing film and TV breakdowns, but this one I just edited out everything that I think should be problematic, and it gives me a chance to go in detail. So project, and I just deleted the name. Type, commercial, TV OC. I don't actually know what this OC means. Conflicts, no exclusivity. So that means that they're not, if a project is for toothpaste, this one's not, obviously, it might say, we're hiring you and you cannot work for any other toothpaste brand for X number of years, right? And they would normally pay more for that privilege. So in this case, they are not paying that extra. So it says no exclusivity, but would be all, and this is the type of project this is for. Canada Broadcast, Internet, World Wide Web. $500 per session, 10 hours, overtime at 75, $100 fitting. This I thought was interesting. This doesn't show up in a lot of breakdowns that I've seen, but in this one, they just straight out spell out what the day rate is. Buyout, 1 year to $22.50 TV broadcast plus 500 internet worldwide 1 year. Now this I thought was interesting because it just spells out, and maybe you can this is better than me just saying it to you, how commercials work. Now, for a film and TV project, if you were to be booked at the union, whether that's the Screen Actors Guild in the US, or in Canada, it's ACTRA, the Association of Canadian Television and Radio Artists, and in BC, it is UBCP, the Union of BC Performers, which is a division of ACTRA. All of these little things, but these are the actors' unions. They set those rates. So for film and TV project, I think the day rate, kind of base is something like somewhere between $750 and $800, and then the buyout's usually about 100% of that, right? So you go onto a film and TV, and you have like a line, or you're there for a day. I mean, if you're on a Hallmark movie, you could even have a fairly substantial role, and they could try and shoot you out in a single day, because they'll often shoot an entire feature film in somewhere between 10 and 14 days. Right, so maybe you make $800, and then they buy you out, which basically they buy the rights to it for X period of time, usually a year or 2 years. So maybe make $1,600 for the day's work. Now, why would a commercial pay more than that? And that's because they're just going to show it more. Your face is going to be seen more, and so the unions, they have, of course, pushed for rules. Now, this is a non-union commercial, is my guess. There it is, non-union. So they don't have to follow any rules set by the unions, but it's still kind of rough guidelines, and so they're paying for the right to use your image in TV and internet, and they can put your face out there selling toothpaste as much as they want, based on the contract that your agent signs and negotiates for you, right? All plus blah blah blah, option to renew, da, 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 right? So the other thing that can be great about a commercial is if it does really well, then they can buy you out again. And so you might just receive a check a year from now for another $2,000, which would be really nice, right? Film and TV commercials, sure. Maybe film and TV commercials, aren't something that like fills you with joy, but the experience of being on set, often very straightforward. Kind of people make a fuss over you, and it can be really fun to be there, and it can help pay your bills, for a good chunk of time. So I think it's worth figuring these out, and at least trying out for them, especially in the world of self-tapes, where it's not going to take a lot of your time. Union, non-union, cast renter deleted, job description, and this is showing up on rules all the time now. All talent need to be double vaccinated. All roles are SOC. Now, if you see this on a script, SOC means silent on camera. And it is easy to think when you see SOC that means that you have to be silent. And I will show you when I get to sort of demoing this, that if you are actually silent, if you actually make no noise, oh gosh, it just looks so painfully awkward. What this means is they haven't written lines for you, and there will not be lines. So that's what SOC means. All this takes place in the early 2000s, which helps give context for the fact that this person is in a video store. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Teen bully, male, 12 to 17 years old. Please do not submit. Needs to look young and mean. Teenage bully. Bigger kid, mullet is ideal, but not a must. All talent needs to be double vaccinated. You also will be asked to show your Vax Pass on set, script posted, self-tape notes, slate first, last name. Now, I've said this in the lessons before, but here it is, that if they ask you to slate, they'll tell you. And each audition's a little bit, oh man, okay. Then each audition's, okay, I just can't draw straight lines. That in each audition, it's a little bit different, and they will give you some guidelines, for how to do that. Slate first name, last name, age, head and shoulder. Pull wide to show full body, and do full body profiles. Now, again, I'll demo for you in a minute how I would do that if I was doing an audition. There's lots of different ways to play with it. Tell us something interesting about you. And this is another one of the reasons that I chose this one today, because this is such a trap. Like, some people just do it absolutely effortlessly, but most actors, when they get to this, they overthink it, or they freeze up. This talk about yourself. Example, what you do for fun, etc. 20 seconds or less. Do not go on and on, please. I love that they added that, because when they don't, you can just absolutely believe it, that like some people will be like, hi, I'm Michael Bean and I like dancing. Right? They'll just give like one fact woodenly for 5 seconds, and then some people will be like, I'm going to tell you a 4-minute story about something. Snatch the video off the wall before the man takes it and give a mean bully look to camera. Now, usually there will be a cut between the slate and the actual action. In this one, they've asked, it looks almost like they've asked you not to do that. I don't think it matters if there's a cut in between there because it's so brief, right? But they've said straight up 5 seconds, right? Don't make a whole meal out of this. This whole thing is 5 seconds. We want to see a reaction because that's what they're going to need for the commercial. I also kept this because these from the breakdown because I thought it was interesting to see the description of the other 2 roles. So again, man in video store, supporting male 26-29, slouching posture, looking for video, carrying his briefcase, it's the same thing. Tell us something interesting about you. Example, best job you've had or worst job, 20 seconds or less. Do not go on and on, please. Then give us a daydream gaze, then a quizzical look, right? 5 seconds, 5 seconds, right? So one of the things that I think is really interesting about this is it spells out like, here's the reactions we want. We want this and this. And that's true for most commercials. They just don't spell it out. Right? Like, remember, they're only going to see you for 5 seconds for 10 seconds. And so if you're doing the kind of thing where you're taking 30 seconds to like find it inside of you in like a slow, organic way, great. If that's HBO, you're probably in the right zone. Style is really important for this. And style for commercials is like, can they see it immediately when they look at your face? Because otherwise it's going to have a real hard time telling the story when they're like jump cutting around the way they do in most commercials. Or when they're showing a commercial that's only 15 seconds long in between other commercials, right? So, and here's where we get to story, style, relationships, change, and want. And of course, there's lots of ways to think about script analysis, but I've been honing it and honing it and honing, and I want to get it down to one hand so we can just talk through it in simple language. And of course, each of those we can branch out. And my plan is over the next couple of months to spend an entire lesson talking about each one of those, to go like, okay, if this isn't the way I'm breaking it down, here's half an hour of what I think about when I think about story. Right? Like here's actually like 70 different questions that go into story. But like, do you have to ask all of those? No. Is it important to like look at them and explore and find out what is alive for you and then come back to it? I think so. I think so. Right. So if you are the person with the briefcase, if you are the teenage bully, then for this one, you're looking at, okay, what's the story? The story is, hunched shoulders, what have we got for the man with the briefcase? Right. We've got slouching posture, carrying briefcase, daydream gaze, quizzical look. Okay, right? So they're not even going to get people to do the voiceover in this. It's even possible that they will hire different voice talent than the person whose face they're using for the man with the briefcase. Well, I mean, they absolutely can. The person in the script is SOC, silent on camera, so they're not talking. So that's what we've got from the man in the video store. And then for the bully, what we've got is looks young and mean. Snatch the video off the wall, give a mean bully look to camera. Right, so that's what we've got to go on here. I know fun, fast, 5 seconds. Like the bully one's supposed to be 5 seconds long, the man's one's supposed to be 10 seconds long, 5 and 5. So if you're going in for the person with the briefcase, then you're okay. I've had a long day. I'm just looking for video. I'm kind of like lost in thought, going, oh man, like what if, what if I was able to start this business where people could watch videos online? And then like, whoa, what was that? That's, that kid took my video and his kid brother kicked my briefcase, right? So 5 seconds, 5 seconds. If you're the bully, then it's snatch. Look at it, they tell you to look right at the camera. Now, again, normally you never ever do that. And I talk about that in self-tapes all the time, right? Don't ever look at the camera unless you're like I am right now, trying to look in the eyes of the people watching and say, hey, I'm trying to reach you and look you right in the eyeballs. But otherwise, it's always just here or just here. Like not even so much that your nose cuts off your eyeball there. It's a sort of a good, easy measure, right? If you're turning so far that any part of your eyeballs cut off, that's probably too far. So you want to be just one side of the camera or just the other side of the camera. Now I use the corners of my computer screen a lot, or I'll just like take the person who I'm talking to on the computer and I'll like scooch their face all the way over in the corner. So I'm looking at a real person. But You make that work however you like. So if we go through, story, style, relationships, the relationships I think is really key with something like this. One of the things that I've heard film and TV acting teachers say, and I think it's really true in my experience, is if you're going to make one decision, just decide on a really clear, strong relationship, and that can often, get you going. Right? That's often enough to make something little like this live. Right? So if we took that piece of advice for each one, then and we just did relationships. We're like, okay, we've only got 2 minutes to prepare this. Right? My agent got it to me, and they're like, can you tape this thing in the next half hour and get it in, right? Like, or I'm so sorry, like we forgot to send you the script, or, like these things have happened to me, not often, but it has happened that the agent is like, I sent the wrong one. Oh God, can you get this to us immediately? Or like, rush, rush, rush. So let's say I've got half an hour and it's going to take me 15 minutes to set up, and then like 10 minutes to upload it. And so I'm only like 3 minutes to tape the thing. And so I don't have a whole lot of time to go like, I'm just going to really think deeply about this. I'm like, okay, great. I just need a really clear relationship. If I'm the bully, then I need a relationship with the video, and I need a relationship with the guy. If I'm the guy, I need a relationship with my daydream, and in a relationship with the bully. And as long as I have those two things, and by relationship, I mean strong feeling or opinion. Remember, acting, drama in general, even comedy, is life with all the boring bits taken out. And so it's not that they're not real. It's that like life is full of strong feelings and relationships. And if you just took out all the stuff in between and stuck them together, that's what TV would look like television. Right? And commercials, because you want those big reactions, it's even stronger in that respect. Right? So if I'm the bully, then I've got like, that belongs to me. And so I'm like, okay, where does that live in Michael Biehn? There's my relationship with like, give me that. And then I've got my relationship with the guy, who I'm, even though it's supposed to be an adult, because of the way it's written in the script, where I'm supposed to be like mean teen bully, I'm going to pick an eyeline, and I'm going to make that person somebody who like deserves my contempt. Right? So I'm not going to try and play my idea of bully. I'm going to pick somebody who Michael Biehn actually thinks is like, Now, I've spent quite a bit of time like looking after or teaching very young people. And so I will confess that when I have to personalize something like that, I'm usually like, the example I usually give to people, I'm like, have you ever had like really annoying cousins or siblings? Or have you ever babysat really young kids who just would not listen to you no matter what you did? Because the thing is, the script can be all about like, I'm the mean overseer and you are my slaves. But like, I don't need to put myself there for real. And how does Michael Biehn know anything about that? Nothing, got nothing. But what I can be is like, oh my God, I told you to go to bed 9 times. You deserve my scorn and contempt right now. And that's all I need to find for myself. And if I can find that in a real way in my body, I'm like, yeah, that's what that feels like. Then I can be like, guy with video, that's it. Yeah, stay back. It's mine. Stupid kid. Nobody has to know what I'm thinking, how I'm personalizing it. Right. So, and you can go back and look at some of the lessons where I talk about like sort of how the different ways to access. But once you've got that strong, clear relationship, then you can go, okay, do I want to imagine into that? Is it just like I put myself there and boom, I feel it? Do I want to find it physically in my body? Do I want to find it in my life? The way that I just talked you through, where I'm like, oh yeah, right. I know what it's like to have this relationship. I'm bringing that to it. You do whatever brings you alive in it, but the relationship's key. Now, style, all right, it's commercials. It's got to be fast. It's got to be really clear. Still want to be believable as a real person, but we are, sort of pushing the bounds of clarity, for a lot of commercials. And, it's worth thinking about what kind of commercial you're in, because if you're in a Lexus commercial, but if you're in then typically it's going to be much more restrained. If you are in a commercial for a children's product, typically going to be much broader because of the audience. Right? If you're supposed to be like driving your BMW and like see something exciting on the road, then it's going to be like, and if you are supposed to be selling kids toothpaste and you see something exciting, then it's going to be more like, wah! And that style decision is important. Story we talked about through the script. Could we talk about like change and want here? Of course, we could go into detail on that, but I think it's right there in the script. In the guy's script, we've got like daydreaming, whoa, quizzical. In the bullies, we've got like my video, I hate you, right? The change is written in for you there. And then like, what do you want? That's the kind of thing that I would only delve into really deeply if an actor just was not finding the feeling. And then I would say, okay, like Christina, if you're not finding the bully thing and it's not working, then look right at me, and like remember when your sister like smashed up your room, and say, I hate you. Okay, good. Now just look at me, like that, and think it. Great. Okay, that's what I need. How do you want to make me feel? You want to make me feel like small or less than you, or and you're like, no, I don't like making people feel small. That feels bad to me. And be like, okay, well, what about get out of my room? Try that. And then Christina would be like, get out of my room. And we'd suddenly be like, whoa, okay, now she's scary because she's like defending her own space. It doesn't matter how you access it. That's where I would find that want is like, okay, how do you want to make the other person feel? What do you want to make them do? Make it really alive. So story, style, relationship, especially relationship, change and want in something like this. And so for the slate, which they say to start with, they ask for profiles. I would push my setup back before I started recording, obviously, until, just to try and make sure that we couldn't see anything. Now they asked for full body. You can do this, and they say like start up close and then pull back to a full body. Personally, I feel this is awkward and puts me at a strange angle, but I'm absolutely no actors who swear by it. And I don't think it matters so much, right? Like this is one of those things where I've seen actors book these things who do it this way. And I've seen actors book these things who do it that way. And I don't think it's a big deal. But if you're like, no, I'm gonna follow the rules exactly the way they said, okay, well then you can like bend a knee like I am right now and be here like, okay, even though my leg's starting to kind of shake from being at this weird angle, I'm going to try and like totally relax. Hey, I'm Michael Bean and my agent or my city, my height. Sometimes you got to show them your hands, and then I'm going to back physically up and show them profiles. Boom, that's the side of my body. And you don't normally talk your way through it unless it's a comedy audition, and that's really your jam. So I do that sometimes, but but I think really that's just a way for me to work through the awkwardness of like, it's just you showing them your body so that they know what that looks like before you get there. Now they've said a full body. If I pull back to full body, you're going to see a whole bunch of junk in the background that I don't want you to see. So me personally, Michael Bean, when I'm doing something like this, I'm like, if you want to see my legs, you can hire me and pay me money. Like, or in the callback, they can be like, can you tip your screen down? I'm like, sure, here's my legs. Look at that. Woo. But I just don't see how that is relevant or important, and they can ask for it all they want, but what matters is really the acting. They can have your agent send them a photo of you on a good day if they really need to see a full body shot, right? Like it's just not that big a deal. Now the trap here is the talk about yourself piece of things. And that's, I think, where, like I said, actors will often get caught on this one. Right, so here we are. Tell us something interesting about you. And so here is my, like slightly counterintuitive trick for telling us something interesting about you, which is, if you want to occur for other people as interesting, just tell us something that you are genuinely interested in and be specific. Okay, so, so interesting equals be interested. And that's what I think is your best bet with something like this. The worst thing you can do is list facts. And I like basketball, and I like soccer, and I like baseball. So like, yeah, so you and like 1,000 other people, and this has no personality and they're not really seeing who you are. Do they care about whatever fact you're telling them? No, of course not. They just want you talking in a way that's like animated and alive and interesting. And I think honestly, they put this in because a lot of these commercial auditions, they will see some like skilled actors with lots of experience, and then they will see lots of people who are brand new. And so kind of what they're also saying is like, hey, if your tape sucks, but you as a person are really interesting for this, we'll still consider you. So what they want to see is you as a person. And so when you get something like this, where they're like, tell us a funny story, which is just like, unless you've done a bunch of stand-up or comedy and that doesn't fill you with terror, most actors are like, oh God, panic. Just talk about something specific that you're genuinely interested in. And so I'll give you an example, right? Like the wooden version of this for myself, if they were like, tell us something interesting about yourself, I would say, hey, I'm Michael Bean, blah, slate, like show the profiles, whatever they want. And I'm a dancer and I've been dancing for a long time. And, the mostly partner dance and some contemporary dance, right? It's a fact. It doesn't show any personality. There's nothing in it. Like, I don't know, in some, is it interesting only if they really need that and as part of their audition and they're like, yes, great. We 100% needed a dancer. Like the agents already told them whether or not you are. So what's way more interesting typically is if I get specific about something, and it doesn't have to be something awesome about you. Okay, so like if I could pick something that makes me feel awesome, where I'm like, okay, this is interesting to me, or I'm interested in this thing, but I also know that this conveys some status, right? So I absolutely could do that, and go and say, hey, slate, and I've been dancing for a long time, and I'm really fond of this particular contemporary dance style called contact improv. And sort of before the pandemic, I was apprenticing with a professional company in Vancouver and training in that style all the time. And it's just like it's something that like puts me in my body and makes me really alive. I could absolutely say that if I thought it was a physical audition, it was relevant and that was sort of important to it. I could also just pick anything that's alive for me right now, regardless of its relevance, because it's about how it makes me feel. And so I could say, hey, Michael Bean, blah, blah. I have been playing this really elaborate board game with my son, who's 12, called Gloomhaven. And I swear the box is like 50 pounds. There's like 95 levels of this board game. I think we spent like 6 hours a day playing it for like several days over the last several weeks. It's a lot of time playing a board game, and it's giving me joy. Right? It's true. It's ridiculous. I have feels about it, and it's specific. Right? Specific to my life. So if you want to come across as interesting, simply be interested and show up, talk to the people about what you are interested in. The more you try and script it beforehand, the more likely it is to come out as one of these, as here's what I plan to say, and it's like I have a script, but it's not a very good script, and I'm not terribly committed to it. That's also likely to happen if you do 6 or 7 of these in a row. So if you do a couple and you watch them back and you're like, oh, I don't like any of those, honestly, at that point, you're probably gonna have to take a break, go have a glass of water, watch a TV show, like come back and do it again, because if we see you in your head, that's again not going to show off your personality in the same way. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about commercials for today. Now, Duke, I'm going to throw it to you for a second because you had a fantastic question that I want to cover in class. So, uh-oh, have I said it so you cannot unmute yourself? Okay, here we go.
For some of this extreme acting that you have to do in a commercial just for a second, how do you jump into that type of zany, goofy, crazy character, especially so quick? Got any tips for doing that other than going to clown school or something?
See, and I wanted to have Duke ask his question live and in person instead of through the chat, because it just seems so specific and relevant for me. So are there ways to get into it? Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like one of them is sort of exactly what Duke has suggested, which is if you've done a bunch of that before, is it easier to access? Of course, just like film and TV acting. But if you've done a bunch of improv, if you've done a bunch of clown school, even if you've just done a bunch of like being a dork to make your friends laugh, and you're like, oh yeah, I've done that 10,000 times. And of course, when you get an audition where they ask you to do that, it's going to feel easier. People are going to go, wow, Dia's just so skilled at this thing. Wow, like, where did you train? And Dia can be like, I don't know. Yeah, it just comes naturally, because maybe she's been like being a goof to make her friends laugh 10,000 times over the last however many years. And so of course, when she does that, it's going to seem really like big and open and honest. Now, if you are somebody who is like really struggles with that, because you're like, well, I don't practice this in my life very much, and I don't practice it in class very much. So how the heck do I get there if it's totally foreign to me, but they still want to see somebody with my face, who can do this thing? Here's my thought. Is that with a self-tape audition, you can cut any part of the tape. So my advice is, knowing that it's unfamiliar, start like a minute or two out from the start of the tape and get all of the awkwardness out of the way in the improv. Right? So if you're like, oh God, like I've got this thing where I've got to laugh and it's really foreign to me. So that's an example for me, because I like often when I do it and I have to do it just like that, it feels horribly forced. I'm like, oh God. And so maybe I do that like ridiculous, sort of like laughter yoga exercise where I just like, I start by just going, ha, 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 ha. Just like, I'm like, oh God, I feel like such a dork. And I'm talking out loud and I'm just like, this is so dumb. Ha, 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 ha. And then I cut right before the like honest laugh starts, and I cut right, before it gets like, before I start to get self-conscious and awkward, and I sent it to them and I'm like, yes, I'm amazing. Right. So there's my advice. If you've got something that's like truly big and awkward, is that like, accept the fact that this is not like a personal failing, that it really is just about familiarity. And if you are doing anything that is wildly unfamiliar, that doesn't sort of come to you intuitively, then give yourself more in, whether that's sort of more time to dig into the story and kind of find your access point, where you're like, okay, I'm going to understand, I'm going to find that relationship, or literally just like, okay, I'm supposed to start the scene sad. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, by like listening to Adele on my headphones, but I'm going to record the whole time. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to like until like I'm a mess, and then all the stuff where like I'm sort of awkward and self-conscious and I'm like part way there, but not quite, like that I'm going to cut out until I'm really feeling it. And then I'm going to take my headphones out. And as I'm cleaning myself up, then I'm going to start the lines, because then people can be like, oh wow, like that person's so genuinely emotional, they're just like cleaning themselves up. Now, can you always do that at the start of the scene? Of course not, right? Like sometimes you got to cry 30 seconds in, or like for one line in the very middle. But for commercial, because they're all about these quick reactions, a lot of the time you can kind of improv your way in. Does that help, Duke? Okay. Sue, we have a self-tape from Dia that I haven't had a chance to look at, and she asked if I could give notes, and she did the same thing last week, and I'm so pleased that Dia's brave and is sending us things. And so I'm going to quickly show you the script. I have not had a chance to watch this yet. It arrived in my inbox as the lesson started, and so it'll be a mystery to me as well as to you. But let's look at the script together. So this is a short monologue from In and Out, she said. So Emily, incidentally, for film and TV auditions, Dia seems to do a lot of monologues. It's rare. It is rare for film and TV auditions to be monologues in my experience. So I don't know what it is about the stuff that Dia goes out for that she often is asked to do monologues. And if Dia, if you have thoughts about that, I'm really curious. The number of monologues you seem to be asked to do, it seems very unusual, at least in my experience of helping film and TV actors. So I lost 75 pounds, 70 pounds. You say you're sorry. All right, after I wait for you? No, not just 3 years, my entire life. If I plan my future around our wedding, after I base my entire concept of self-esteem on the fact that you're willing to marry me and you're sorry. Thank God my parents are dead. This would have killed them. Are you really gay? Is there any other time you could have told me this? Wearing a wedding dress you picked out. I highlighted my hair because you said it needed shimmer. I loved you and believed you and pretended not to notice the Streisand thing. I thought you were just creative. You were just smarter than me and more sensitive and more interesting. I thought you were the most wonderful man that ever lived. I thought you could just change my life and show me the whole world, teach me about art and life and magic. And I thought you could make me feel like a beautiful woman instead of the girl nobody wanted. Now, the good famous movie In and Out 1997 comedy monologue. So this from a project from years ago. It means that in terms of like getting a handle on the style, Dia's got a couple of options. She could either say to her agent, what is it exactly that, like, basically, why was this monologue picked? Right. So she could either investigate the style of who is this being shown to and what is it that we want to showcase? Or she could look at the original project and say, okay, is there something that's sort of like about the way it was acted originally that made them think, yes, I can't quite put words to it, but like this. So definitely, so you could either look at it at the original project, or you could investigate, what is this being used for? And either way, you're going to want to make sure that you put yourself in it. So the danger of watching the original project in too much detail is that you feel like you have to capture that. And again, it gets that like wooden quality of, oh no, I have to capture the quality of the thing that they sent this to me, instead of remembering that, like, oh man, like all of these, were just putting them out there into the void, and if they don't have us in them, then it's missing like the one really unique selling feature that you've got to offer to it. So just, come back to making sure you've got yourself in it. So that's style. And I like looking at style before we get into story. One of the things that's great about the project, the fact that it's a real project, is that then at least you can go read the synopsis of the film on Wikipedia, and you don't have to invent the whole backstory. So maybe that can fill it in. If this was me, would I source the film and TV script and like read all 120 pages of it? Which is probably available since it's 1997. Like you could. Would I do it? Only if this was an actual audition that was really going to be sent to producers for a project I was very excited about. And then I might do that, but otherwise, no, I'm going to read the synopsis on Wikipedia and go, that's okay. And that's how they know each other. And that's how long they've known each other. And like, here's where in the movie this monologue happens. Like, obviously she's at the altar, but is this 5 minutes into the movie, or is this the culmination of the entire movie? Is it the climax, or is it the setup? Like, how does that help me in terms of like my understanding of where I am in the story? So, and then relationship, obviously there's a relationship with the lost weight. There's a relationship with the wedding dress. There's a relationship with the guy. There's a relationship with Barbara Streisand. It's clear that she like highly values him. Like, I thought you were just more interesting and right? So it's not just about upset. I think the trap in this would be to play it just for the upset instead of all of the layers of other things that are happening. Dia's nodding her head like, oh, yes. And maybe we'll see that reflected in Dia's tape. But again, this is you watching me look at this for the first time and just sort of share my thoughts in an open way. Anyway, so those relationships, I think, are crucially important. And especially with a monologue, taking your time to find the changes is going to be really important. I think what a lot of people do with a monologue is they tend to go really fast. They're like, I've got a bunch of text, so I've just got to get it out and get it out and get it out. And sure, it's true that except in HBO, you're probably not going to be taking like huge long pauses between everything, or you want to be selective about when you're putting those pauses in so they really mean something to the audience. I also think that finding the nuance in this and making sure that each piece of it is alive and personal to you is what makes it interesting to watch. Like, if it's all on the same level, even if that one level is really interesting, we just get tired of it real fast. Like right. So if it's all hysterical, you're going to lose us after 5 seconds, right? If it's all, like, measured and angry, you're going to lose us after 5 seconds. If it's all like full of like teary, like, how could you do this to me because you're so amazing? Then you're going to, right? If it's all that, whichever one it is, then you're going to lose us. And so looking for those changes, looking for and then you can, depending on your style, either sort of map them out. Okay, check, like this is where the changes are. Or you can know that, like a real person, these are the overlapping layers. And it's okay to shift in between them, even from one take of the scene to the next. It's not like, oh, I want to do the scene again and I want to bring in that change 2 words earlier. I know actors who do that, and they do a marvelous job of making it feel real. I know that for me, personally, it is more effective to go, oh, okay, I know that I'm sad. I know that I also deeply admire this person. I also know that, like, this is hilarious, and I'm turning part of my upset into like, oh my God, hysterical laughter, and so I don't know when one of those things is going to surprise me, and I put in these beats, but then if something catches me in a different way as I'm going, I'm just going to roll with it. I'm just going to take that as good information about what's happening inside me and put it into the story and like try that. Right. So changes, I think, are something that are really important in a monologue. And then want, I think, is important because it drives the whole thing. What do you want? Do you want this person to like get over themselves, get married to you? Fine. Like date guys if you want, as long as we get married, because everybody's already here in the church. Like, let's come on now. This wedding is my life. Right? Like, is what you want for this guy to just like get over himself, like shake it off, and like walk out there and walk down the aisle with you, or is there something else that you want? And you can get clues from the actual project, or you can go, what is this being used for? What are they trying to show about Dia? And then maybe you make a slightly different choice about what you want the other person to do or feel. Right. So maybe the original one is like, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know anything about the movie. Maybe the original one is to show like how hysterical and ridiculous this woman is, so that it drives the main character's story, where they're like, whoa, yeah, I wouldn't marry her either. Like, I'd want to get the hell out of there and never talk to her again. And so she's supposed to be just this like hysterical maniac, and your agent has given this to you for their own inexplicable reasons, because they want to see your comedy chops. And so then you'd be like, oh, okay. I can't just be, a hysterical maniac. Like, I've also got to bring details. Do you just put in the chat window, she got nominated for an Oscar for the performance? Oh yeah, that's no pressure there. Why don't they just give you Meryl Streep's monologue from Sophie's Choice and just like go right for it, hey? But working on challenging material is the kind of thing that helps you grow. So good for you for putting yourself in that challenging situation. And know that whatever you come out with is going to be imperfect. And as long as it has you in it, then that's the thing that makes it useful to put out there, right? It's not about, did you realize your goal perfectly? That's a way to be unhappy as a person, and also hate the work no matter how skilled it is. So there are some of my thoughts, on story, style, relationship, change, and want. The change, often called beats, by acting teachers, but like, it just means, does it change, right? Like a story that's like the same at the beginning, in the middle, and end is not a good story. Whether it's 2 lines long or 2 minutes long or 20 minutes or 2 hours or whatever. And want, often called objective, is really just what you want to make the other person do or feel, right? And all of that ultimately, like, they just all sort of feed back to relationship, and the strong feeling or opinions you have about things. They're just like actor tools that help people get into, oh, right, I have to behave like this is a real thing that's really happening to me, even though everything is imaginary and I'm just in front of a computer, in front of a blank wall in my own apartment. And so how do I get there? Well, in general, if I feel any sense of pressure, from people watching, from a camera watching, well, then I have to make those strong feelings or opinions considerably stronger than they need to be, because then once I'm under pressure, what's going to happen is I'm going to feel less. And students in acting class say this all the time. They're like, when I ran this at home, I felt it so strong. Why isn't it coming now? It's like, well, yeah, because then you were totally safe and comfortable and at ease, and you weren't worried about people watching or the camera watching. You didn't have this extra level of thinking about technical things. Of course you felt more. Your attention was just on being and feeling. As an actor, is it possible to get to that point where you can do those technical things without thinking about them because they're so familiar, so you can just be in being and feeling? Yes. If you're not there yet, then one of the things you can do is just keep practicing, because you're getting it in your body, just like somebody who's jumping hurdles, and you got to get to the point where you're not thinking about what your feet are doing while you're doing it, right? So that means you're doing the right thing, just practicing. The other thing you can do is make choices that give you huge feelings, knowing that you'll end up with like half that once you start performing. You're like, okay, I'm in the show as the bully who kicks the guy's briefcase. I gotta he's not like my worst enemy, but he's somebody I really dislike. But if I'm preparing it in that place where I'm just where I'm not yet under pressure, I might have to find this level of feeling, knowing that once I'm under pressure and doing technical things, even if I feed myself the thing that absolutely enrages me, I'm gonna get just enough to be like, I'm mean, but I'm not enraged. So let's watch Dia's tape, and then maybe there are like specific concrete notes, and certainly I can at least reflect back to everybody else some of the technical things. So very quick reminder, if you haven't watched any of these lessons, I just like throwing this in there in case this is your very first one of these. This is the frame, what the camera sees. This is a medium close-up. This is where auditions are. Bottom, just the armpits to the top of the head, without too much headroom, not squinched off to one side, and not, this is what's called a medium shot. You don't want to do one of these unless you're doing an audition that requires the use of your body, right? So if I'm doing something where it's like I have to pretend to be good at ballet, which incidentally, if they're just seeing your arms, they're never gonna know. It's all about commitment, right? So, but if I'm not doing one of those, then your audition should absolutely be in medium close-up. This is an eye light, the light that's reflected in my eyes, very important. Lighting is what makes you look beautiful on camera. And if I get the lighting wrong, then people say, oh, no, that guy's just kind of funny looking. If I change the lighting, then they're like, wow, something sparkly about him. Yeah, my eyeballs, they're sparkling because I'm shining light in them. And it's really important. It's called eye light. Eye line is the imaginary line between your eyes and where you're looking. I already talked about like how you just see how my eyeballs just getting cut off. That's too far. Just to one side of the camera or the other. And you'll see that Dia's doing all of those things right from the get-go. The only other thing that I will say, and this doesn't show up in Dia's tape because she's doing a monologue, it just makes sure that you are closer to the recording device than your reader. If you're doing a scene, make sure that and most people are just using their phones and the microphone that's on their phone, make sure that you're right beside the phone and your reader is like 15 feet back there so that your voice is way louder than theirs. Nothing worse than your voice being like, and your reader who can't be seen being like, these are the lines that I'm saying because I'm holding the phone. I'm like, yeah, you think that, and I'm supposed to be feeling, you're supposed to be listening to me. You definitely don't want that for your tapes. Okay, here we go. Da, da, da.
I lost 75 pounds. I lost 75 pounds. And you're sorry. I'm sorry. And you're sorry? After I wait for you? No, not for 3.
Okay, so there's 3 of those. You're sorry, you're sorry, you're sorry. The great opportunity to make each one of them different. I would also say, and this came through in one of the last tapes that you sent, that there's an opportunity to play with pacing here. And maybe you pick it up later on, but especially if this is a comedy, even if this is like a really sort of intense moment, I wonder if it would change it or make it more alive for you if you picked up the pace so that the spaces for thinking are just a little more intentional. Like, I'm not saying you don't put them in at all, but if you take them between every line, then they start to lose some of their oomph.
3 years for my entire life? After I planned my future around our wedding, after I based my entire concept of a self-esteem on the fact that you're willing to marry me?
Good. Now that comment in particular, is there irony in it? Because it's either because that the way that came across to me was like sort of extremely sentimental, and I think that there is a certain amount of irony around in there, or at least like an edge to it. Knowing what you want this other person to do or feel might be useful or helpful. Incidentally, for everybody, look at this medium close up. Highlight. She's right there in the middle. She's not like off to one side. There isn't like weird, headroom. There's a nice neutral background. All you really need is like a blank wall. So technically, this is in really good shape. Click the wrong button.
And you're sorry. Thank God my parents are dead. This would have killed them.
Again, it's a funny line. And here it's delivered, with like sort of sentimental honesty, that I wonder if it is right for the style.
Are you really gay? Was there any other time you might have told me this? I'm wearing the wedding dress that you picked out. I got highlights in my hair because you said it added shimmer. I loved you and I believed you and
Yeah, and so there's that thing happening where it's like the like pained sadness has now I think been stretched too far. Absolutely, that's one of the layers here. But a line like, was there any other time you could have told me this? There's such a great opportunity to just attack this guy. And then it changes, and then it changes, and then it changes. It's that kind of aliveness that I think is worth shooting for.
Pretended not to notice that Streisand thing. I thought you were just creative and just more intelligent. I thought you were sensitive and smarter than me. And I thought you were the most wonderful man that ever lived. I thought you could.
Now, I would say that if your intuitive take on this, Dia, is this much sentimentality, then that probably is really important to include, whether or not it was sort of right for the original performance in 1997. Right. So I think that based on what I've seen so far, maybe here's the spot, where I would put that in, where like I drop it and be simple and be honest and go like, yeah, look, I thought you were better than me, and like this hurts me. More eye contact. Watch the huffing. Right. It showed up more in the beginning, but it's something that is often a tell that happens when somebody's looking for a line. They're like. It's not happening in a big way, but it's happening enough here that I think that your choice to tape this and then talk to me about it and then retape it again before the date on Thursday, fantastic choice. Because learn it, forget it, learn it again, forget it. It's one of the best ways that I know to get text into your head. Okay, let's make me smaller so that we can watch Dia more again.
Change my whole life and show me the world and teach me about art and life and magic, and make me feel like a beautiful woman instead of a girl that nobody wants.
Okay, I have a 12-year-old, which is why all of these Marvel movies show up in my suggestions. Dia, thank you so much for being brave and sharing that with us. Do you have any questions before we wrap today? Oh yeah, I got to do that.
I didn't spend long on this, and all your feedback is amazing. I've taken notes, and I spent maybe half an hour or something on this. So I clearly saw everything you said, but yeah, I'm going to retape it, and I guess it'll come up next week and we can
I
just
would
see.
love that. Yeah, if I could show people the retaped version of it next week, that would make me really happy. So please do share that. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's a smidge after 6 o'clock. Thanks for staying. Bye. I hope to see you next week. This is Michael Bean for myfreeactingclass.com. Check out the video archives, check out the lessons, check out our YouTube channel. Bye.